Imagine a young soldier. He survived the trenches of World War I, endured gas attacks, mud, and artillery bombardments. He returns home, strong, healthy, invincible. 2 days later, he is dead. Not killed by an enemy bullet, but by an influenza virus. That was the day everything changed forever, and he was not alone. Millions perished. Epidemiologists of the time faced a scenario that defied all known rules. Typically, influenza targets the most vulnerable, children and the elderly. The mortality curve usually resembles a Latin U, with 2 peaks at the ends and a trough in the middle. But in 1918, everything was different. In the middle of that U, a third enormous, ominous peak emerged. It targeted those in the prime of their lives, from 20 to 40 years old. This graph wasn't just statistics, it was a death sentence for the strongest. The virus operated with a twisted, frightening logic. It didn't seek weakness, it hunted strength. The main mystery wasn't how it killed, but why the perfectly healthy individual became its ideal victim. Why did your own immune system become your greatest enemy? To find the answer, you must discard everything you thought you knew. And to begin, forget the name. The Spanish flu had nothing to do with Spain. Spain was a neutral country in World War I, and its press, free from wartime censorship, was the first to openly report on the pandemic. Meanwhile, warring nations concealed the truth to avoid demoralizing their armies. The killer's true name was H1N1, and its method was devilishly simple. It didn't break down the body's defenses, it found the most powerful immune system and pressed a single button: self-destruction. And it is there, in this furious reaction of the body itself, that the key to the enigma lies. This H1N1 was an alien, a genetic stranger. Its code was partly assembled from fragments of avian influenza, which humanity had never encountered before. To the immune system of a soldier returning from war, it was utterly unrecognizable, like a lock for which no key existed. The defense systems couldn't rely on past experience, they simply had none. It was the first encounter, and it immediately proved fatal. Normally, a virus is like a hacking program. It penetrates a host cell, uses its resources to churn out thousands of copies, then the cell membrane ruptures, and new viruses go on the hunt. The immune system is like a security service. It receives an alarm, identifies the enemy, and dispatches specialized killer cells to intercept. It's a precise, surgical operation, a carefully calibrated response to a specific threat. But the 1918 strain broke the rules. It didn't just trigger an alarm, it rang all the bells simultaneously. It provoked not a response, but a hysteria. The immune system of a young, healthy person reacted with maximum force. It didn't try to neutralize the enemy, it tried to incinerate it, along with everything around it. It was like calling the fire department to put out a candle, and instead, an army arrives and razes the entire block to the ground. Now, look at it through the eyes of the virus. You are a simple molecular machine. Your goal is replication. You penetrate lung cells, but suddenly the host body goes mad. It declares total war on itself. It throws not a special forces unit at you, but its entire nuclear arsenal. The defense cells attack not just you, they attack healthy tissues. They destroy the alveoli. They literally sink the ship they are sailing on. And you simply watch as a perfect defense system commits suicide. This furious, uncontrolled self-attack was the real killer. A person's lungs became a battlefield, rapidly filling with fluid, blood, and the debris of their own cells. The individual didn't die from the virus itself. They literally drowned in the products of their hyperactive immune reaction. This biological revolt, this madness, has a precise scientific name: a cytokine storm. Cytokines are a molecular alert system, chemical messengers. They relay commands throughout the body. Alert, mobilize, attack here. It's a well-oiled, precise mechanism, but the 1918 virus turned this mechanism into a weapon of mass destruction. Imagine a large hall, a microphone on stage, powerful speakers opposite it. Sound from the speakers feeds into the microphone, gets amplified, feeds back into the microphone, and again. In a fraction of a second, a quiet hum turns into a deafening, physically painful howl. This is an acoustic feedback loop. A cytokine storm is the same loop, only instead of sound, it's panic signals. Each immune system cell screams louder than the last until the entire system begins to destroy itself. You know the feeling when you have the flu, the muscle aches, the fever. That's not the virus itself. It's the work of your cytokines. It's your immune reaction, which you feel throughout your body. Now, imagine that reaction, those aches and fever amplified 1,000-fold to the point where your own defense systems begin to rupture your blood vessels. And there it is, the answer to the main question. The virus didn't hunt strength. It simply exploited it. The more powerful your immune system, the more speakers and microphones it had, the more deafening the howl in that deadly loop. The young soldier's immunity wasn't a shield, it was a detonator. Poor health resulted in a weak reaction, but impeccable health provided the ideal, most spectacular form of self-destruction. Outwardly, it looked like a scene from a horror movie. As the lungs filled with blood and cellular debris, the body stopped receiving oxygen. The skin rapidly changed color. First, the lips and fingertips turned blue. Then the entire face became dark purple, almost black. Doctors called this heliotropic cyanosis. Patients were fully conscious as they suffocated, literally drowning on dry land in their hospital beds. A biological weapon had been created. The virus had found its ideal way to kill. But even the most perfect weapon needs a delivery system. It needed routes. It needed crowded ships, cramped barracks, packed trains, and unsuspecting cities. It needed World War I. And humanity unknowingly built the most effective distribution network in history for it. The virus received its global highways and prepared to strike, not one country, but the entire world simultaneously. The first outbreak was recorded in March 1918 at Camp Funston, Kansas. Hundreds of men lived in one barracks, sleeping shoulder to shoulder, breathing the same air. In 3 weeks, over 1,000 soldiers fell ill. But the war couldn't wait. These soldiers, already carriers of the virus, were loaded onto trains, sent to East Coast ports, and then onto crowded transports across the Atlantic. Every train car, every ship's hold became an ideal incubator. The virus traveled with the armies. It was a stowaway on every gun, every box of ammunition. Globalization looked different back then. It was the globalization of empires and armies. Ships didn't just go to Europe. They went to Bombay, to Cape Town, to Sydney, to remote ports in Africa and South America. From American ports, the virus went to war. And from European ports, it traveled home with colonial troops returning to India, Vietnam, and the Caribbean. It penetrated the most isolated corners of the planet via routes laid by the war. In a few months, it charted the entire world map. Not a single continent remained untouched. This process of continuous human-to-human transmission has a scientific name: serial passage. Imagine selecting the most aggressive fighting dogs for breeding. With each new generation, they become fiercer and more effective. The virus underwent the same selection, only its proving ground was human lungs. In the cramped, unsanitary conditions of barracks, only its most infectious and rapid versions survived and spread. The virus didn't just travel. It learned. It mutated. It evolved in real time, before the eyes of the world. That's why the second wave, in the autumn of the same year, was an apocalypse. The spring strain was merely a rehearsal. Over the summer, in the trenches and field hospitals, the virus underwent an accelerated course in killing. It honed its mechanism. It became a perfect predator, targeting the strongest prey. When it returned, it struck without fail. In some cities, average life expectancy plummeted by 12 years in just a few months. 99% of all Spanish flu deaths occurred during those 13 weeks, from September to December 1918. This virus showed humanity a simple, brutal truth. Our greatest strength, our ability to unite, build networks, and connect cities and continents, can become our primary vulnerability. It used our civilization as a weapon against ourselves. It didn't need bombers. It had our trains. It didn't need spies. It had our soldiers and sailors. The story of 1918 is not just a tale of a long-past pandemic. It is a blueprint, a detailed instruction on how our own perfectly connected world can turn against us. And this blueprint hasn't disappeared. It simply lies in an archive waiting for its hour. In the face of such an enemy, the world reacted in the only way available to it. It tried to lock itself down. Cities froze. Theaters, schools, churches, everything closed. Public gatherings were forbidden. In San Francisco, a gauze mask became a pass to ride the streetcar. Lacking one could result in a fine or even jail. It was a desperate, instinctive attempt to break transmission chains, to build walls where none had ever existed. But human nature doesn't change, even in the face of death. Society's reactions splintered. Some saw these measures as the only salvation, others as tyranny and an infringement on personal liberty. Anti-mask leagues emerged. People organized protests. They were tired. They wanted to return to normal life, even if that normality was killing them. The story of 1918 isn't just about a virus. It's about us. It's about how we behave when fear knocks on every door. You're familiar with that feeling, aren't you? Debates about masks, closed schools, canceled holidays, economy versus health, freedom versus safety. That very blueprint from the archive was pulled off the shelf quite recently, and we all read it together, page by page. We discovered that in 100 years, technology has changed, but our reactions, our fears, and our disagreements have not. So how did it end? How did humanity survive the apocalypse? The answer is simple and brutal. The pandemic didn't stop because of quarantine or masks. It simply burned itself out. The virus swept across the planet like a wildfire, consuming everything in its path until it ran out of fuel. The fuel was us, people without immunity. By the end of 1919, almost a third of the world's population had been infected. The virus hit a wall of antibodies produced by the survivors. And then it did what all successful viruses do. It changed. Its most lethal versions killed their hosts so quickly that they couldn't transmit further. But milder strains gave people a chance to go to work, to the store, to a neighbor, and infect them. Natural selection played its role. To survive, the virus had to become less lethal. It wasn't defeated, it simply changed tactics and became part of our own biology, forever. This descendant of the killer never disappeared. It simply ceased to be a sensation and became routine. It became what we call seasonal flu. For almost 40 years, until 1957, virtually all flu cases worldwide were caused by direct descendants of that very strain. It no longer triggered cytokine storms on a global scale. Humanity adapted. The virus became endemic. It traded its monstrous power for longevity. But its genetic code was too successful to simply vanish. It became a donor, building material for future pandemics. When the Asian flu arrived in 1957, it was a hybrid, a new avian virus that borrowed several genes from the old H1N1. The same story repeated in '68 with the Hong Kong flu. The ghost of 1918 passed the baton to its children and grandchildren, and then it returned personally. The 2009 pandemic, which you remember as the swine flu, was caused by an H1N1 virus. It wasn't just a relative, it was a direct descendant of the strain that caused genocide a century ago. It returned, mixed with fragments of swine and avian viruses. It circled the globe again. The story hadn't ended. It had simply come full circle. That very killer isn't lying in an archive. It's circulating among us, right now. It is the foundation upon which almost all influenza pandemics of the last century have been built. So what have we learned from this lesson? We've received a blueprint, a detailed instruction manual for assembling the perfect disaster. And it is frighteningly simple. First, you need a stranger virus, one that the immune system has never encountered in battle. Its appearance must be like a bolt of lightning from a clear sky. No pre-existing instructions, no past antibodies, an absolute genetic alien. Second, it needs a key, not to weakness, but to strength, a mechanism that turns the most powerful immune system into a frenzied soldier firing on its own troops. the ability to trigger not just a reaction, but full-scale self-destruction. Third, a network is essential. Global routes that connect everyone to everyone. Today, these aren't steamships and trains, they're jetliners. A sneeze in Singapore becomes a problem in Paris 12 hours later. Our civilization is its ideal circulatory system. And finally, most importantly, we ourselves must help it. Our inability to trust, our desire to find simple culprits, our fatigue, which causes us to give up just a step before victory. A virus is simply biology, but a pandemic is always sociology. It cannot win alone. It always needs an ally. And more often than not, that ally is ourselves. We've learned to fight its genes. We can decipher the code of a new pathogen in days, create a vaccine in a year. But all this technological power proves useless if we cannot agree with each other. The story of 1918 left us not just a virus, it left us a mirror. And the main question it asks is profoundly simple. In the next pandemic, whenever it comes, who will be our greatest enemy? A new, unknown virus, or the one we see in the reflection every day?